Hey, church family, thank you for joining us again. Thanks for watching this video with us. Boy, we are just in a bit of an elongated season here that lately, if you've been watching the news or you've been talking to your friends or anything like that, you know stuff is happening. So we wanted to come on to let you know what's going on, kind of what our response is to this, and just kind of understand what the season is and where we're at. This can be a difficult season for us. It can be hard. In the midst of that, there's a lot of good things that we want to try to do. But before we get that, we just have to recognize some things. So, Amy, why don't you talk to us a little bit about this, where we're finding ourselves these days?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think as new restrictions and things are shifting in our province, we all had a sense of hope as we were maybe coming out and maybe having, restrictions lifted. And now what's happened is it's gone in the opposite direction. And talking with people and even the feeling that we have is a little bit of, not even a little bit, a lot of sadness that it isn't going how we thought it would go. And it's gone much longer than we thought it would go. And so it's just really important, church family, to, before we kind of pivot and get into all the, how is it going to look going forward, to just pause and grieve and recognize this is not what we thought it would be. Christmas will not be what we thought it would be. The events, how we hoped church and small groups would look like, it just won't look like that. And so we're just saying it's okay and really important to acknowledge the loss, to lament. And we see that in Psalms quite often with David, pouring his heart out to God with all the things that are grieving him and causing sadness, that he pours his heart out to God. And then he goes into worshiping God and remembering, but he first acknowledges the loss. And so that's something as a church family that we want to be doing, is just be really honest about the places where we're recognizing our sadness, the places that we've lost with these new restrictions coming in, and to have compassion for ourselves and our families and for people we come in contact with. Because these restrictions, this whole COVID thing, it has cost some people more than others. And that's really important that we acknowledge that and that we have compassion to grieve, permission to grieve, and that we have compassion for those around us. And so once we've taken a pause and recognized what we have lost, there's just some new restrictions that we actually want to go through so that, church family, you are informed, you know what's happening, and you're not caught off guard, because that's a feeling that nobody likes. No. So Greg, what are some of the new things that have changed?
Yeah, so one of the big things is obviously our Sunday morning. That's our main gathering time to come together and worship. And for a while, that's looked different. And right at the very beginning, we've asked people, make sure you're giving 6-foot distance, make sure you're not shaking hands with people or hugging people. Make sure you're honoring that space for people. And so we're going to continue to do that. That hasn't changed for us. Maybe one of the things that has changed, though, is instead of being in cohort groups, we're now being asked for just the next 3 weeks, not forever, but just for the next 3 weeks, we're being asked to stay within our household groups. So when you come on a Sunday morning, we've got all of our tables set up in the sanctuary just like we always have, and we're asking you to sit just with your own household to make sure that we keep that separated a little bit better. The other thing is we're being mandated to wear masks. So when you arrive, we've got masks here, those regular blue paper type masks that are available to you. We'd also encourage you to bring your own mask with you. But throughout the entire service, from the time that you come in the doors to the time that you leave, we're asking you to have a mask on throughout that entire time. Now, we're going to have a letter that's attached to this video as well. If you're looking at this on one of our social media sites, the letter is right below in the comments, a link to that. It's also on our website, so you can take a look at the letter. There's a list of a couple of exemptions that you're going to want to take a look at. And just, it's going to talk about all the things we're talking about right now in a little more detail. So take a look at that. But those are kind of the biggest changes for us, that we're sitting in our household groups and we're asking you to mask up for the entire time. So that's our Sunday morning activity. At the same time, we normally have had some thriving small group happening out of people's homes. So Amy, why don't you tell us about what's happening with our small groups?
Yeah, so that has been something that from the beginning we've really encouraged. Gather in your small groups, gather in your small groups. And now until December 18th, the government of Alberta has made it really clear that in-house faith gatherings should not be occurring. So I have contacted all the small group leaders and have asked that for 3 weeks until December 18th, that their small groups do not meet in houses for that purpose. But thankfully, there's some other options. It's not just, okay, now we aren't connecting at all. Some other options are meeting virtually. There's a whole bunch of different platforms that allow us to still meet virtually. You can meet outside to a maximum of 10 people. Another way we can do this is for small group leaders, you can schedule your time to come and use the church facilities. The restrictions have made it really clear that faith group meetings in the place of worship can still continue. So that's something that we're not just saying, oh, for 3 weeks we can't connect at all. It just has to look a little different. And different is actually okay.
Mm-hmm. And now, in addition to that, nobody's telling you you can't talk to people. So remember, call people up. Write letters to people, send texts to people. You can go outside and go for a walk with other people, those type of things. And we're just being asked right now not to have in-house gatherings with anybody outside of your household. So please continue to reach out to people, because this is what the church does really well, is connects with each other. So make sure you reach out to people and look in on those people that you know might be feeling a little more isolated during this time, and reach out. Both Pastor Amy and myself are here at the church. We'd love to talk to you on the phone. We'd love to see you in person if you want to call ahead and set up an appointment to get together. And we'd love for you to be connecting with other people and being the church with the other people that are around you. Now, as we talk about all this stuff, this is probably the most important thing out of all this. And Pastor Amy already talked about how we need to be full of compassion and full of grace to ourselves and to others. And actually, when we look in Scripture about what the church is supposed to be known for, is that the church is supposed to be known for these things: for love, for grace, for compassion. And so you and I, we may not agree with everything that's being asked of us. But at the end of the day, what are we known by? When the community looks at us, how are we known? So there's this fantastic passage in 1 Peter. If you get a chance to read it later, if you can read 1 Peter chapter 2 and 1 Peter chapter 3, these are amazing, amazing passages. But I just want to draw your attention to just a couple of quick verses in these two chapters. Here's what Peter says to us. He says, "Dear friends, I urge you as aliens and strangers in the world." So that's what we are, right? We belong to we have citizenship in heaven. And so we're aliens and strangers here. I urge you to abstain from sinful desires which war against your soul. And then look at this verse. This is 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 12. "Live such good lives among the pagans," that's everyone who doesn't know Jesus, "that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day He visits us." Later on, these two chapters, later on in verse 8 of chapter 3, this is what Peter says. He says, "Finally, all of you live in harmony with one another. Be sympathetic, love as brothers, be compassionate and humble. Do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult, but with blessing, because to this you were called, so that you may inherit a blessing." And that's such an amazing passage, such an amazing passage. So good to think through these two passages. And how are we responding to the authorities? And if we jump back into chapter 2, one last verse, it says, "Submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every authority instituted among men." And it goes on to say, if you do evil and you get punished for it, what good is that to you? But if you do good and get punished for it, oh my goodness. Now that's going to be amazing. But in all this, submit yourselves for the Lord's sake. There's a reason why we do the things we do. We do it for Jesus. That's the ultimate thing. We do this to know Jesus, to know his love and his manifest presence. But we also do this to make known his love and manifest presence. That when the community looks at us, and it may just be a perception thing, but when the community looks at us, how are we responding to the authorities? How are we responding to the people around us? Are we responding with our selfish desires? Or are we responding with love and grace and compassion? So I challenge you, just as we get done here, as we've shared this with you, our heart is that we would fulfill the mission that God put us on, and that the world would know Jesus because of our actions. So blessings on you. I know this is not an easy time. Give yourself space, but then as you walk through this, love, grace, and compassion. Let that be the thing that the world knows us as, and let the world see Jesus in all that we do. Blessings on you this week. We're praying for you. We love you guys, and we look forward to seeing you next time we can see you.